Good evening and welcome to Town Meeting Television's continuing coverage of Election 2020. November 8th is Election Day. Of course, now you can vote at any time. You always could vote at any time, but now more than ever, you're encouraged to vote at any time, including the day itself, Tuesday, November 8th. We're glad this evening to be welcoming the candidates for, there's a new district number. What is the new district number? CHI-23, which is Essex. And because there was redistricting, so we have all new numbers, and it's CHI-23, and it's 4 candidates, including 1 incumbent, for the 2 seats for the district. So this evening, I'm very happy to welcome Garofano, who's running as a Democrat. She is an incumbent, and Leonora Dodge, who's also running as a Democrat, and Maryse Dunbar, who's running as a Republican. Maryse Dunbar. That's the anxiety of the moderator, is getting the names. And Denis White, who's running as a Republican. So we welcome you this evening to call us at 862-3966. And we're going to start with opening statements. And why don't we start with you, Garofano? Why are you running and what qualifies you for the position of legislator in Vermont?
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Town Meeting, for hosting us today. As some of you might know, I was appointed in January of this year to represent Essex by Governor Scott, and it's been my absolute honor to serve in that capacity and serve my community. I am proud of the work that we did the half of the biennium when I got there in passing some historic legislation to really put really big investments in the economy and the future of Vermont, and we being able to leverage federal funding, massive amounts of federal funding, to really pass and invest in our future here. We also passed historic legislation to amend our Constitution to protect reproductive liberty and prohibiting slavery as plainly as possible in our Constitution. I am running for re-election because there's still so much work to be done. We continue to have serious major problems in our communities. We are continuing to have a housing crisis. Our childcare system is at a breaking point, and we have workforce shortages that impact our whole entire economy. These are the issues that I hear about from my neighbors and friends, and as a public servant, as a mom and a person of color in Vermont, I feel like I bring the right perspective to policy-making decisions in Montpelier.
Thank you so much. Leonora Dodge, tell us why you're running and what qualifies you for the position.
Yes, first, thank you again to Town Meeting TV for hosting. And like all of us here, all of the candidates especially, I love Vermont. I am so glad that we picked this state as our home 22 years ago, where we've raised our family. What sets me apart is that I'm a trilingual Latina who grew up in Montreal and Mexico. I've lived abroad in Chile, Spain, Guatemala, and for my entire life I've been bridging cultures and seeking compassion and understanding. In Vermont, I've done that by running Spanish playgroups with Building Bright Futures, teaching Spanish at Champlain College, and coordinating the Essex Westford International Potluck Dinners. When the pandemic decimated the staffing at our schools, I went to become a paraeducator and classroom assistant in the Spanish immersion program at Jericho Elementary. These opportunities and this activism have helped me to get to know my fellow Vermonters, and they have also given me insight into the very profound challenges that we face. Being priced out of housing, massive health care costs, and childcare challenges are profoundly challenging to so many Vermonters today. And all of these issues affect Black and Brown Vermonters even more profoundly. So I'm running so that I can share my unique cultural perspective, my collaborative approach, and my optimism to help all Vermonters.
Thank you so much, Leonora. Maryse Dunbar.
Well, again, thank you for the honor of having me here today. I chose to run for a number of reasons. One is to give Vermonters a choice on the opposite side. It's important to give people a chance to think equally, as this forum does. So I became a registered nurse. I came to Vermont from New Hampshire to learn nursing, and then I ran a private small business for 28 years. And during that time, I traveled quite extensively. I went to Africa, went to Israel, went to Mexico, and a variety of places, which really gave me also a cultural perspective on things. And people around the world are very interesting. And and then basically, I have been involved in the GOP local committee for 10 years. I've assisted with a lot of events. And I ran for this particular office 2 years ago, and here I am again. I just really am concerned about some things that I'm seeing that are happening, not only in Vermont, but around the world. I really am running because I'm concerned for children and grandchildren. The future right now is troubled, and I want to do everything in my power to have a good economic, educational experience. That's my efforts.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Denis, tell us why you're running and what qualifies you for the position. Denis White.
Okay, I was born and raised right here in Vermont. I've been a master electrician for 45 years. I have no political experience, but at one point, every politician had no experience. And in my lifetime, I've watched this great state go from deep red to deep blue, and I'm not especially enamored with that scenario. So I decided that it's my civic duty to step up to the plate and get involved, primarily to give my Republican brothers and sisters someone to vote for, because quite often these days, there are few or no Republican candidates on the ballot. I'm also hoping to squelch some of the nonsense and hypocrisies that have been coming out of Montpelier of late.
All right, well, I hope we hear a little bit about those as we go on in the debate. So thank you so much, Denis. All right, Leonora, why don't we start with you on the education question? The legislature can make impacts on how education is funded statewide. Do you see the need for changes in how we fund education, and how would you use your office to move that forward?
Great. Well, so there are two sides to talking about education and money. On the one hand, the raising money, so that's through taxes. And I think that our goal needs to be to pay taxes in proportion to your wealth. I think that right now there's a discussion afoot about switching from our current property-based tax system, which can be problematic for people who are now living in properties that are suddenly worth so much more. So if you're on a fixed income but your house is now worth so much, it's going to be onerous for you to pay that based on that. So switching to taxing based on your income makes sense to me. So that's a great discussion. And then conversely, on the spending side, there's also a lot of discussion on funding in proportion to the greatest needs. And so I think that we need to look at, lower income students that might need access to technology, after school and summer school programming, rural students that might have issues with internet connectivity and transportation, English language learners that certainly need extra instruction to thrive. And then finally, hungry students cannot learn. I saw that as a paraeducator directly, and I saw what a wonderful thing universal school lunches was. I would definitely try to continue that, not just for the next year, and maybe fund that with taxing sugary drinks. Aside from funding, obviously, we have other important issues like racism and homophobia in the schools. So but that's not funding, although it should be.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Maryse, Dunbar, tell us about your approach to education if you're to be elected.
Well, I think there are many concerns. Education is not good enough anymore. There are many, as you mentioned, Leonora, there are many ways of teaching that I think need to be put aside, and let's just say I believe that we need to, what am I trying to say? We need to pay according to the results. And right now, the records and the tests show that our students are going down. They're not doing as well. And there's a lot of social, emotional learning being done, which is fine, but I'd like to see a little bit less of that and more of the reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I also somewhat believe in private schooling, putting our taxes towards private schooling. If the teaching is not up to par, then people's taxes rightfully should go towards a school that provides adequate education. And don't get me wrong, I think there are many wonderful teachers. Many teachers are doing a fabulous job, but the scores are going down. If only we've all noticed how many people working at cash registers these days don't even know how to count your change. So I just would like to see, instead of taxing people more, I would really like to see funding go towards results. Are the results good? Give more money. So
All right.
that's about it.
Thank you so much, Maryse. Denis White, tell us about your thoughts on education financing, and how you would use the office to move your agenda forward.
That's a question that's the state's been wrestling with forever, and there's no good solutions. I have no solutions, but whatever model is proposed, it will certainly have its inequities, whether it's property tax based or income tax based. You can't please all the people all the time. The current model seems to be working, and people are used to it, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Whatever the answer is, though, it should include no more taxes. We're being taxed to death as it is. If school districts are having a problem with their budgets, meeting their budgets, then I suggest pruning their budgets, especially like if a new school or addition needs to be built, such as what Burlington High School is facing right now. Just build a square building. You have no idea the added construction costs whenever you deviate from just a plain box building. These buildings don't need to be Disneyland-like architects' fantasies. If you've ever seen the main lobby up at the UVM Health Center up here, that's 5 stories of wasted space. I moved out of Williston 30 years ago because of the wasteful construction cost of the 2 schools in town there, Williston Central and the Allen Brooks schools. Just a colossal waste of money in those 2 buildings. So, just keep the buildings simple. You'll save a few bucks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ray Garofano, your view of education and education financing in Vermont.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of what Leonora shared earlier. I will say that I'm really proud of the work that we did this last session with 287 and changing the weights of how taxes are paid and how funding calculations are done for schools based on their need to educate the children, the students that they have. So that will do a lot to achieve equity as far as funding the different schools. I also am really excited about the conversations that are happening about changing the taxing model, because I think that is a challenge. I will say, just wanted to respond to something that Maryse said. First of all, I am hopeful. What you were sharing was just sounded like, I have a school-age child in 7th grade right now, and they are receiving an amazing education in Essex Westford, and I'm so proud of the teachers and the administrators and the faculty and the staff, what they provided for us during COVID, continuing to educate our kids, continuing to reach out to the kids that didn't have the right technology and really being in touch was phenomenal. And they're all completely burned out. And we have very little supports for them. So I think as a community, we owe those teachers, administrators, faculty, and staff to really show our appreciation and continue supporting them. I also think when you change funding model to look at results and fund based on good results, there's been a lot of studies that show that that can be problematic with schools being motivated to change or only focus on students that will achieve higher results. And a lot of better resource schools end up getting more funding, which is extremely inequitable. And we've seen that happen over and over again across the country and here. So I just advocate for continuing to support our teachers, our schools, and having a structure that provides a free, public, high-quality education to all of our children.
Thank you. Maryse, you have a follow-up?
Yes, I just want to add to what you said that I'm just concerned about, teachers are great, and they're wonderful, and they did suffer a lot during the COVID, and it seems as though a lot have left because of the stress. So teachers have gone through so much. But my concern is the extreme permeating of the system of the social emotional learning. It's almost more than true education in some cases. You know, it's not a specific class, it's just stressed, and I know this, it's stressed that the teachers need to incorporate this into all of their classes. Even math or science, it doesn't matter. They have to incorporate something that includes the social emotional teachings. And you know, there's counseling available. I would suggest after school support groups, just a variety of things. I'm trying to keep this short, but it's too much. So let's get back to the basics. And as far as results, I don't have the statistics, you probably do, but it just makes sense that if schools are not doing very well, and I'm not saying they aren't, but my experience is that, and what I've learned is that the grade scores are going down, and you know, something has to change.
Any follow-up to that? Should we move on to the next question?
We can move on.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to actually expand your time to 2 minutes to answer things because you're all, rather than cutting you off in a minute and a half because you have more to say. So let's go to healthcare. The increasing cost of healthcare is putting pressure on Vermonters and the state's economy. It's the biggest expenditure in our budget and probably in most of our households. COVID has sharpened our focus on the inequities. What's next for healthcare changes in Vermont? Could you be specific? And I think we start with you, Maryse.
Okay, well, I think the word inequities needs to be described or defined. The answer that I come up with that question is that the rates in hospitals are already fixed, but there are inequities in salaries. Starting with the CEOs of the hospital and CEOs, and there are just some areas of the hospital that are that seem inequitable. Some good doctors have left the system and left Vermont because so much is demanded of them with little equitable pay. Also, travel nurses are so needed, and they come here so well equipped, but they're getting paid so much that it has caused a lot of our regular nurses to complain and even become travel nurses themselves. So the staff comes and goes, and you know, I think that something needs to be done. Now, we do need to attract travel nurses, so I'm not really sure what needs to be done, but we need to do some more research and see what could become more equitable.
And are there other aspects of inequity that you want to address in healthcare? I mean, what kind of additional policy changes would you advocate if you were in the legislature?
I would have to do some research.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Denis, your approach to healthcare and changing, any big changes you see?
Well, I don't really understand how the high cost of healthcare is considered a drain or a pressure on the state's economy. I mean, healthcare is a huge, huge business, and it employs a boatload of people. These businesses and the employees, they pay taxes and they spend their money here. So, how is that detrimental to the economy? I also am not sure what inequities that the question is referring to, but if it's health insurance inequities, then I would have to say this, that everywhere you look these days, there's help wanted signs everywhere. And I'm pretty sure that every business that employs 10 or more people is required to offer some sort of health insurance plan. So I would suggest people seek employment with such businesses. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think just to clarify the question, there is an inequity in how healthcare services are distributed based on who has insurance, who can afford to pay for the premiums, and who can afford to pay for the out-of-pockets. So a lot of those policies are high deductibles, and they're really expensive for people. And there's inequity in all aspects of any of these policy questions, but I think that's where we were headed with that. So Ray Garofano, would you like to respond to the question about healthcare and
Sure.
how to rein it in?
Yeah, so when I think of the inequities in healthcare, I think about what COVID showed us, that especially for marginalized populations, New Americans and people of color, I think it was a real wake-up call for our health department, and I work for state government, and I saw that very close up, that in the very beginning, there was questions about maybe wondering, are we being inequitable, and are we doing enough? Maybe we are doing enough, but what it turned out, and I'm really proud of what the state Department of Health did, because they did prioritize. They did put investments and attention and intentional work in making sure that BIPOC communities, marginalized communities, New Americans were getting prioritized vaccine clinics, more access to the healthcare that was needed in a really, really difficult time. So I'm really proud of that work that the state has done. I will also say that we, at the legislature this last session, we invested massive amounts of American Rescue Plan for increasing the number of students seeking nursing degrees and recruiting more nurses in Vermont, educating them. There was a problem where we didn't have enough lab space to actually educate the nurses that they need to actually do the practice nursing, and so during their education. So there was a lot of investment made in that, which we're going to see results of very soon. And then the Health Equity Advisory Committee, which I believe was established last year before I got to the legislation, that will have a lot of really great recommendations for us in the State House and other lawmakers and policymakers into what exactly, they're doing a whole survey of our health system in Vermont and looking at the inequities. And lastly, the Vermont Health Department recently received a very large grant for health disparities, and now it has a huge team of people that are really intentionally working at embedding racial equity and equity work throughout the health department in every area of health care. So that's going to really set us up well for the next few years, and hopefully we'll become leaders in the region, if not the country, and focusing on this work and removing some of the inequities.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Leonora, would you like to comment on this question regarding healthcare, the distribution of it, and the outcomes?
Yes, I would, and I want to, again, just like the pandemic was so tough on educators, obviously it was also for health workers and nurses. So I think that Vermont is on the right track, you know, trying with like Dr. Dinosaur and with the community health centers to catch people that fall through the cracks, what you've just mentioned about the inequities, right? People that can't afford, you know, if you have a small business, you don't have the 10 people, how do you get decent health care? I've known so many entrepreneurs that, you know, struggle with that. You know, these other programs that are state funded are sort of stopgaps for an overall system that is private. It feels like buying insurance is like you're putting chips on a casino table and then you roll the dice and you hope that you don't get into a horrible accident or come down with a debilitating, horrible illness or chronic disease. And that seems insane. I grew up in a place and have lived in many countries where instead of having massive private insurance be the overall system, you have a public system that supports everybody, and then, you know, maybe complementary private, you know, optional insurance for some folks who want that. You know, and then the big question is that system working for us in this country? And the answer is no. We spend public and privately funded. We spend almost twice as much as countries that are not communist socialist dictatorships with, you know, horrible economies. I mean, compared to Canada, New Zealand, Australia, France, Germany, you know, England, we are spending so much. But the main question is, are we healthy? And the answer to that is no. We are dying earlier. We are being hospitalized and dying from treatable diseases. We have fewer doctors and we visit the doctors less. So I think that there's, you know, great to do stopgap measures, but we need to consider overhauling the system and flipping it from overall private to considering a public system that will help all people.
Thank you very much, Leonora. I just want to remind our viewers, our number is 862-3966. If you have a question for our candidates, we'd love to hear it. We would always love to hear your questions. We come up with them here, but we like your questions the best. All right, so Denis, we are going to start with you, Denis White, and the question is criminal justice reform. There's a bunch of questions here. Do you think policing needs reform? Do you think the community feels safe? Do you think changes need to be made to improve the safety of our community?
Well, there's a large sector of the population that is getting shortchanged by this defund the police fad. The hardworking taxpayers are not getting their money's worth, and that is socially unjust. Over the past couple years, though, the police have received their comeuppance, and they've been reformed a little bit, and now it's time to refund the police and get back to good old-fashioned law and order. You know, when I was a young fellow, I had my share of run-ins with Johnny Law, and you know, that's the norm at that age. You're you know, being a long-haired, loudmouth know-it-all. But as you age and you have a family and you acquire property in a house, you learn to appreciate law enforcement more and how important they are. And I wholeheartedly support the police and the emergency responders and their role in public safety. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Ray Garofano.
Thank you.
Question on criminal justice reform.
Yeah, so just to clarify, we have not defunded the police in Essex. Our police budget actually went up. So we have funded them more, and I do believe in the work that our police do in Essex, but also other resources that we have, such as the Community Justice Center that do restorative justice work. And you know, when you look at criminal justice, you have to look at the root cause of the problem. And this country, I think, has not invested in creating a social safety net for vulnerable people. When folks have substance use disorders, when they have mental health challenges, when they have housing crisis or food insecurity, we don't have easy way for those folks to access help and support, which often leads to problems and involvement with the criminal justice system. So there's no easy answer. It's a very complex issue, obviously, but I think that, in Essex, our police department has been very active working with our Community Justice Center, with Select Board, with our city councilors in Essex Junction, and working with community organizations that are working on racial equity and educating people in Essex and our community about racial equity and how that involvement looks like for marginalized populations and police involvement. And there's been a lot of good work happening, so I want to see more of that. And I don't oppose restructuring the funding, so maybe more funding goes to mental health services or restorative justice or substance use prevention. Because often we ask our police departments to respond to things that they're not equipped or have the skills or the training to respond to. And that's not fair to them, and that's not fair to the person that's having the crisis or the problem. So I think there's some creative work that can be done, and I'm really happy to say that in Essex we're actually doing the work and work very closely with our police department.
Thank you so much. Leonora.
Yes, so I would say ditto to what Ray said. I also think that we need to support our law enforcement. I also think that we need to, not expect that police have become the last resort at the very end of developments, social developments for each individual that lead to either a criminal or a violent life or event. And that's too much to expect. And so I know that Essex has a group called Essex Best, Building Equity, Solidarity, and Trust. I think we need all of those things. We need to build the trust. We need to know that whether you're black, brown, or white, that you can call the police and when you have a problem and not end up becoming the problem. We are blinded by bias in a lot of the searching for crime, solving crimes. UVM economist Stephanie Seguino did a study that took 5 years. Over 800,000 traffic stops were analyzed, and what the study showed is that police in Vermont tend to stop 3 to 9 times more a person of color, a driver of color, than a white person. And even with that massively disproportionate, ratio of traffic stops, they still only found contraband of any type. They still only found more of that in white drivers' cars. So I think that we can't forget that we all in this country have a bias, whether you're an educator or a police or a healthcare provider. And so it's important to take that into account when thinking about police work and police reform.
Thank you so much. Maryse, why don't we talk about criminal justice reform, and how would you address community safety as a legislator?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Ray, for enlightening me that we have not defunded the police in Essex, but I feel that defunding the police in Burlington has proven to cause problems. Word has gotten around to the criminals that they can do whatever they want. Almost every day you're hearing about another knifing or another shooting, and it's increasing. There was recently an incident just a few days ago in Essex where a man took off with a bat to try to hit a person's in their car, and the poor woman was frightened to death and thankfully sped off safely. But incidences are increasing, and people are even robbing stores, and they're not allowed to, the store owners are not allowed to stop them because they're afraid someone will be injured somehow. So word has gotten around that you can do anything you want. So I think we need to give more respect back to the police and maybe even add more if necessary. And then we need to prosecute the criminals. They're getting away with so much, and a lot of criminals are being released. And the word recently from someone in the legislature was that they don't release the dangerous ones. Well, the truth is that the dangerous ones are released just as much as the others. I know we're backlogged in the courts, and we're low on jail space, but we have to figure out a way to make a penalty so strong that they'll think twice before they commit a crime. So again, that would bear some research, but to me, up front as a legislator, I would just fund anything that supports the police and bring some sort of information to the criminals that they will not get away with this.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask kind of a lightning round question, and starting with you, Ray. What committee would you want to be on if you are elected? You were appointed, so you're not being
Yes.
re-elected, but elected to the legislature.
I was assigned my dream committee, Human Services, and had the chance of working with the amazing chair, Ann Pugh, for the short time. But I would love to return to Human Services, but my skills also and my background also fit well with Housing and General Affairs and the healthcare committees. I've worked in Human Services my whole life, or my career in Vermont in public service. But honestly, I would be grateful to work on any committee. I think the work is hard, and having served, kind of being thrown in it, not at the beginning of session, kind of mid-session a little bit. There's a lot of learning, and it's really, with my background, I feel at least comfortable in Human Services or in Housing and General Affairs, but, it's also really cool to think about learning about another committee and another body of work, and hearing from experts in that area to make policy decisions.
Thank you. Leonora Dodge, what committee would you seek out if you could choose?
Well, I love Human Services. Also, that's that's my background and education. I see a lot of great opportunities in in clean energy, and that's also a big passion. And housing I honestly, I would be thrilled to get anywhere where I can get something done. I was, almost in tears talking to a friend of mine about how hopeful I am for our state, and what a pivotal moment we're at where we can truly make a difference. And it always feels that way in Vermont, right? With, being able to access our legislators so easily, but yeah. So any committee where I'm a good collaborator. I'm a good team player.
Thank you. Maryse Dunbar, where would you like to be sitting in the legislature?
Well, I think they're all wonderful and important, but I think being able to choose, I would go with the Education Committee, because again, I'm concerned about our children learning to a point that we can excel as we used to, being able to compete with other countries and compete in our heavy business system. We need people that, well, let's just say that I'm concerned about the future. I personally don't have any children in college or in school or grandchildren. I have a daughter, but she's grown, but I'm very concerned for all the other young people. We need to have a competitive system in this country, and I guess that's it.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Denis, tell us what committee you'd like to sit on.
Oh, maybe transportation, so we can get the circumferential highway back on track and completed. The existing section of the circumferential highway is hands down the best thing that has ever happened to Chittenden County transportation. The CERC originally, it passed muster with the Army Corps of Engineers, with the federal courts, and the EPA. The EPA did not mandate that we couldn't build a CERC. They just suggested that an alternative be found. And it was shot down by Peter Shumlin and Conservation Law Foundation. And the Conservation Law Foundation, I don't know how that group gets party status because they don't have Vermont's best interest at heart. Thank you.
You're welcome. They are building the CERC highway. They're moving earth.
Not the one in
Oh,
Essex.
not the CERC highway.
The Southern
Sorry.
Connector.
They're
Southern
building the Southern
Connector.
Connector. Sorry, I have it on my mind because it's
Burlington.
very intense.
Any
is
city
always what
any
you
city
need.
that is a city has a ring road around it.
Got it.
And that's what we need.
Now I'm visualizing what you're talking about. Thank you. All right, so good. So let's go to the ballot issues. There are two constitutional amendments, Proposition 2 and Proposition 5. Starting with you, Leonora, what's your position on those two constitutional amendments? And could you just clarify what they are in your answer?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay, so we have Prop 2, which is a proposition to amend Article 1. And then we have Prop 5, which is to amend to add an Article 22. Prop 2 amending Article 1 is regarding the language in our Constitution that was foundational to our state constitution that sadly contains the original sin of our national constitution as well, which is it was supposed to eliminate slavery, but what it actually did was it set up a system where there were caveats and exceptions where slavery was still okay. So if you were underage, if you owed a debt, if you were in prison, if you preferred to be enslaved, you could. And, that's just not okay for any of us. I think that any party would agree with that in this.
Absolutely.
Thank you, yes.
So you support that?
So I support,
Proposition 2?
in short, I support Proposition 2 to amend Article 1. And then Prop 5, and in part also because I just want to say, I think about migrant workers, I think about prisoners who could be forced to labor. And then Prop 5, Article 22, is to keep government out of personal health decisions regarding reproductive choice. And the reason we want it in our Constitution is to make sure that more restrictive laws, that government interference cannot be achieved as easily by just changing a law. If it is in our Constitution, then legally our legislators are bound to keep government out of the decision making and leaving it a private decision. And
So you support that?
I also support that, and I think that it just keeps things the way that we have them currently. Having lost constitutional rights is an absolute, travesty for so much of our population. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Maryse Dunbar, how do you sit on Proposition 2 and Proposition 5?
Well, Proposition 2, I agree. We all agree that we support the amendment as it is written. Proposition 5, Article 22, two names for the same thing. I think that we need to explain to people that, and many people already know this, but it needs to be emphasized that full-term abortion is already fully legal in Vermont. So that's not a concern. I really feel that the language is so vague in Proposition 5, Article 22, that it deceives. It's really vague, and the word abortion and woman is not even in Prop 5. It's vaguely worded that it's been said that most lawyers can't even figure out what it says, but it's the dangers of what could happen if that is passed. The possibilities are endless, and a lot of them would end up in litigation with 1 or 3 unelected judges making decisions for everyone. And some of the scenarios include possibly parental rights over their children being removed in school. School parental rights being removed, and if I was a parent and something was being done to my child that I disagreed with, if this law is passed, then they could say, sorry, it's legal for us to continue this. So there's a lot of litigation of all scenarios that would possibly proceed.
So you don't support it?
I do not.
Okay. Dennis White, what's your position on Proposition 2 and 5?
Yes, Vermont was the first state in the nation to abolish slavery back in 1791, and during the Civil War, we lost more soldiers per capita than any other state, so I think our record speaks for itself. The Constitution already says that slavery is illegal, and Prop 2 only looks to add the term indentured servitude, so I think it's a moot point and unnecessary. Prop 5, or Article 22, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that just a couple of years ago, the Vermont legislature guaranteed the right to abortion in this state, regardless of what the federal government says or does. So you can always get an abortion in this state. Is that correct? Personally, I'm neutral on abortion. I can take it or leave it. What you do with your body is your own business. But the vague wording of Prop 5 goes above and beyond abortion. It's a whole nother ball of wax. It's a horse of a different color. It's going to open up a huge can of worms. It's a prime example of being given an inch and taking a mile. I feel that Article 22 has an ulterior motive, and no good can come from it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very
Could
much.
I follow up?
Please do, Leonora.
Yeah. So the wording in the constitutional amendment is actually designed based on prior legislation. So the language.
One, 2, or 5?
22.
Okay.
So that our latest amendment, right? This is what a moment, right? We're talking about literally our first article and now adding an article. So I think it's an amazing ballot. When you hold it in your hands, you feel the weight of history, in my mind anyway. What the amendment aims to do is exactly the opposite of what you are worried about. It is meant to stop the potential for future litigation on this issue, so that we don't get embroiled in awful scenarios. And so it's, the wording is based on prior legislative language that is specific. It is about reproduction. It is not about anything else. It's not about parental rights, or it can't be taken to mean all of these other things. And it protects abortion at prior to the 22-week mark, which is the way that it is right now protected in our state. It's just trying to prevent anybody from taking away the rights that we do have, so that any decision that was to be made, if a law was going to be challenged, because laws are easier to challenge than constitutional amendments or constitutional articles. If it were to be challenged, it would have to be, within this very important, if we're going to let the government interfere in this decision, is it because there's a super important reason that the government could interfere? And that's the only reason that it could change then.
Dennis, you had a comment, and then Maryse.
Then it should have been worded that way.
Exactly. Should have been worded. It's very loose. It's very loose. And who is Ann Cummings? Do you know?
Ann Cummings, she's the head of the Senate Finance.
Okay.
She's a senator.
Well, Ann Cummings is on record for saying that the wording is very vague on purpose in this bill. So what is she getting at? What is the, so And I agree with Denis. I mean, if it's all that you say, and it would be lovely if it was, but there's nothing that says that when people are looking at this little short sentence, reproductive autonomy, what is that, really? And then there's another statement that doesn't explain itself very well either, involving the government. And it's just very deceiving. I think that if we're going to pass something like this, then we need to make it clear.
Thank you. Ray Garofano, your view on these two propositions?
I support both. Years of doing this over two different biennia is because it's that important, and we don't want the opportunity for it to be changed with every legislative session. So the fact that it took 4 years, 2 different sessions, and it overwhelmingly passed with plenty of public comment opportunities, with the governor's support, I think that says a lot for our state, and I am really proud of the work that has gone into this, because intentionally it's not a simple thing to change your constitution. So we've
Especially
seen
Vermont's.
Yeah, and we've seen in the last 6 months nationally why this is needed, because when reproductive rights are taken away, who is the first to be harmed? Poor people, people of color, marginalized communities. And we need to protect Vermonters from that kind of federal action.
But it's already protected. Fully, it's law right now.
We need to enshrine it in our Constitution so it's not at jeopardy.
Well, that would be fine if the wording is precisely written as you describe.
Well, and Maryse, the wording that is on the ballot was overwhelmingly passed by both the House and the Senate, with many Republicans voting for it. So I will
we have
say,
to remember, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have to remember that the State House is probably 3/4 Democrats, and they always win every single vote that they attempt to pass.
and that's why we have elections. We live in a democracy.
Well, that's right, but you said it overwhelmingly passed, but that's because your party is overwhelming in the State House.
But-
it has a majority.
Just not to argue, but did you say the governor had also endorsed this legislation? I mean, this constitutional amendment? Or
I may be misspeaking there, so don't quote me there, but it passed the House and the Senate, both two different sessions.
okay.
And with a lot of committee work, which means that you would have to speak with specialists in the field,
But
lawyers.
85% Democrats. That's why I really feel we need to bring in more Republicans.
Well,
Because
if the
we need
argument
balance.
if the argument is that we want to protect abortion,
It is
the right,
protected.
right? So if we agree that that is something valuable to protect, and legislators and lawyers have said this is the best way to do that, then to me it's a no-brainer.
So I think we're all clear on where you stand on these questions. So, and I appreciate the discussion and the elucidation. And we're about at time for closing comments.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Isn't that amazing? I told you it would go fast. And I'm going to give you a little time. You don't have to do it in a minute, but I think we're going to start with you, Maryse Dunbar, on your closing comments on what you would like to say to the community in order to ask them for your vote, their vote.
Well, I just want to say I'm running, as I said earlier, because I want to try to protect the freedoms and the rights of especially young people. I think and I also ran because I wanted to give voters a choice, but I would be a fresh face in Montpelier, someone with differing opinions than what's been happening for 48 years. And my main goal is to try to help the economy, reduce crime, and do everything within my power to help Vermonters. I'm a citizen just like all of you, and I just want the best for Vermont. So I ask for your vote, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Maryse Dunbar. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Denis White, your closing comments.
Thanks for the invite and good luck to everybody. Basically, no new taxes and protect the First and Second Amendments. If you are concerned or frustrated or discouraged about defunding the police, that our First and Second Amendment rights are being eroded, about the status quo of government lately, that the Pledge of Allegiance isn't being recited in school anymore, about the looming carbon tax, which is set to include home heating fuels, that in the not too distant future you will be forced to drive an electric vehicle, that school mascots are being stripped for no good reason. Well, join the club. We need no new taxes. We're being taxed to death now, and taking the guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens is not the answer to public safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to have you here. Ray Garofano, your closing comments.
Thank you. Thank you again for providing this really important opportunity for us to highlight our priorities and our views on the topics. I'm a mom, I'm an immigrant, I'm a career public servant in Vermont, having worked for Family Services my whole entire 17-year career. I'm a community activist and an organizer. The last 6 months in the Vermont House have been the honor of my life. I didn't really think this was going to happen in my life at this time, but it's really truly been an honor to serve Essex and really bring my perspective that is different to the table, making decisions, and I would be really proud to serve Essex again and ask for your vote.
Thank you very much. Leonora Dodge.
Yeah, so thank you again so much, and thank you for all coming and for all caring so much, so deeply.
You too.
That comes across, yeah, very much, and that is why I love Vermont, and that is why I was asked to run by fellow delegates, and I strangely didn't think twice about it because I really felt that this would be a positive, productive, and effective way to give back to this wonderful state that we've gotten to call home, my family and I, for the past 22 years. Canvassing has been incredible. I really have enjoyed getting to hear people's ideas, and I am so honored for when people share their challenges and their hopes. We are at a really exciting time, so much money pouring in, so many important decisions being made. I'm really looking forward to bringing my insight, my spirit of collaboration to the State House. And para todos mis amigos hispanohablantes y latinos, feliz mes de la herencia hispánica. Mami, muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's just a pleasure to have you all here. Thank you for being with us. We've been with the candidates in Chittenden District 23, which is Essex, and we are preparing for November 8th, which is Election Day, and we hope that you will all take the opportunity to vote because it is a great opportunity to see that your views are expressed in the chambers of government where decisions are made. And don't forget to tune in at 7:30 on the 8th of November to our live results program here on Town Meeting TV, and to watch all of the candidates and all of the forums that we have. We're very pleased to bring those to you. So thanks for watching, and good night.